The pot roast had been in the oven since 2 o'clock, and by 5:30 it had that particular smell, the one that meant my mother had been basting it every 45 minutes, and the whole house had soaked it up. I noticed it the second I came through the back door, before I even had my coat off. That smell meant she was in a good mood. That smell meant something was being celebrated. I should have driven home right then. My father was already at the table, unfolding his napkin. Natalie was on the sectional with her 2 kids. Bryn, who was 4 and had recently decided that sitting quietly was for other people, and Lucas, who was 6 and currently explaining something about trucks to the ottoman. My brother-in-law Greg was on his phone in the corner the way he always was, present but not entirely. I put my bag on the hook by the door, said hi around the room, got a glass of water from the kitchen. My mother was pulling the roast dish out of the oven with the big green mitts. "Your timing," she said. 5 more minutes. "I know. Your car was already in the driveway when I pulled up, so..." Sit down. Greg, put the phone away. We're eating." It was a regular Sunday. I'd been doing them since I moved out 7 years ago. Not every week, but often enough that the routine had its own grooves. My spot at the table is the chair closest to the window, the one with the slightly wobbly leg that no one has fixed in 4 years because my father keeps saying he'll get to it. The wall calendar hung above the refrigerator the way it always did, thick with my mother's handwriting. Soccer practice, dentist, oil change, someone's birthday in a red circle. She had been keeping that calendar since before I was born, different colors for different people. The kitchen ran on it. We ate. Bryn knocked over her juice and no one acted surprised. My mother talked about the neighbor's fence. My father mentioned that the hardware store on Route 9 was closing down, which opened a 10-minute conversation about how nothing lasted anymore, which is the kind of conversation that happens at every family dinner, regardless of what else is going on. Then my mother put down her fork. She did this thing where she straightened her posture slightly right before something significant. I noticed it a long time ago, and I've never told her I noticed it. She put her fork down, squared her shoulders a little, and looked at Natalie with this particular soft smile. Natalie put her own fork down and looked back. Something was passing between them, some signal already sent and acknowledged before any words came. "We have some exciting news," my mother said. Bryn announced that she wanted more bread. "In a minute, baby," Natalie said. "Go ahead, Mom." My mother looked at Greg, who was already smiling at his phone, then at my father, who apparently already knew. I was the only one catching up. My mother folded her hands on the table. "Natalie is pregnant, 13 weeks. Everything looks great." The room moved the way rooms do when news lands in them. My father making a sound that was half laugh and half exhale. Bryn saying, "Pregnant means baby," very seriously to Lucas. Greg putting his phone face down and reaching over to squeeze Natalie's hand. I said, "Congratulations." I meant it. Baby number 3 was not a surprise exactly. Natalie had mentioned wanting a third. Greg made decent money. They had the space. It made sense. I was happy for her. But I was also watching my mother's face, and her face had not finished moving yet. "We're so excited," my mother said, "due in August, and I know it'll be a lot, 3 little ones, especially with Bryn still so young." She paused, not for breath, for effect, the way people do when they're about to say the thing they actually called everyone together to say. "Which is why it's so wonderful that Claire is going to be there to help." I set my glass down. "I mean, it'll be an adjustment," my mother continued, "but having Claire available those first few months, 2 days a week, we were thinking Fridays and Saturdays, just until Natalie gets her footing. That's the kind of thing that makes a real difference. You know how it was when Bryn was born, having family close by." She said this the way she said most things she had already decided, warmly, without a question mark, while looking at Natalie and not at me. Natalie was looking at me. She had a small, slightly hopeful expression that was doing a lot of work. Greg had gone back to his phone. My father was cutting into the roast. Bryn wanted more bread. "I work Fridays," I said. "Oh, I know, but you could take those as personal days sometimes, couldn't you? Or we could shift to Saturday and Sunday." "Mom." "We're flexible. It doesn't have to be rigid." "I haven't agreed to anything." The table didn't exactly go quiet. Bryn was still talking about bread. Lucas was making a truck sound. But there was a shift in the air above the adult conversation, something that recalibrated without anyone saying so. My mother's smile stayed in place, but her eyes changed slightly. That particular expression of someone who has encountered an obstacle they were not expecting and are deciding how to reroute. "Of course," she said. "We can talk about it. I just mean, we're thinking ahead, planning." I said sure, we could talk about it. Natalie said she was so glad I was on board. I had not said I was on board. I had said we could talk about it, which is not the same thing, and I watched the table absorb my words and re-emerge on the other side of them as if I had said yes. My father passed the roast. My mother said something about August weather. Greg asked if anyone wanted the last roll. I ate the rest of dinner and drove home in the dark, the specific discomfort of someone who said maybe and was heard as yes, sitting in the passenger seat the whole way. I waited 2 days before I said anything, which in retrospect was its own kind of answer. I told myself I was letting the excitement settle, that Natalie had just announced a pregnancy, and the whole family was happy, and it would be unkind to immediately pivot to a logistics argument. That was the version I told myself. The truer version was that I didn't know how to say no to my family in a way they would actually hear, and I needed a minute to find the words. The words didn't come. On Tuesday, I texted my mother that I was happy for Natalie, but that I needed to think more carefully about the Fridays and Saturdays, because my workload had been heavy lately. She texted back 3 heart emojis and, "Of course, we can work around your schedule," which sounded like a concession but wasn't one. What it meant was, "We'll rearrange the days," not, "We'll reconsider whether you're doing this." On Wednesday, she called me on my lunch break. I answered because I almost always answered, which was also, now that I was paying attention, part of the pattern. "I was thinking," she said, "if Fridays are too hard, maybe we try it Thursday through Saturday. Or just Saturdays to start and see how it goes. Natalie's not due until August, so we have time to figure out the rhythm." I said I appreciated that, but I hadn't said yes yet. I was still thinking. She said she understood completely. Then she said, "You know how much Natalie is counting on you." I said I knew. She said, "Family is the only thing that's real in the end, Claire." That was my mother's version of not applying pressure. I got off the call and went back to work and spent the rest of the afternoon doing a fairly impressive impression of someone who was fine. My job is project management at a mid-sized logistics company. A lot of tracking deliverables, running interference between people who disagree about timelines, making sure things that were supposed to happen actually happen. I am reasonably good at it. I am good at it in part because I learned very young how to manage the gap between what people want and what is actually possible. I learned that in my family first. It was Thursday when Natalie's friend posted in the baby shower group chat. Natalie had added me to the group 2 days before. 31 people, most of whom I had either never met or only seen at Natalie's wedding. The friend posted a long, enthusiastic paragraph about planning the shower, and in the middle of it, casually, was this: "And we're so lucky that Claire is stepping in to help with the baby those first few months. It truly takes a village." I stared at the screen. I had not said yes. I had specifically, twice, said I was still thinking. I had used the words, "I need to think more carefully." But here was my name in a group chat with 31 people I didn't know, attached to a commitment I hadn't made, and the message already had 7 thumbs-up reactions. I called Natalie. She picked up on the second ring, which told me she had been expecting the call. "I saw the group chat," I said. "Oh, yeah, I mentioned it to a few people and I guess it got out. I'm sorry, I should have warned you." "Natalie, I haven't agreed to this." A pause. "I thought you were just working out the schedule." "No, I said I needed to think about it. That means I haven't decided." Another pause, this one longer. "Oh. Then, I didn't realize. Mom said you were on board." There it was. I had not said I was on board. I had said we could talk about it, and my mother had translated that into a yes and passed it along, and by the time it reached Natalie, it was already settled. I was already committed. I just hadn't been told. I told Natalie I needed more time, and I'd talk to Mom. Natalie said okay. She didn't want me to feel pressured. She said it sincerely, but the group chat notification was still on my phone, and my name was still in the message. I put the phone down and stood in my kitchen for a minute, looking at my own refrigerator. No calendar on it. I had never kept one. I tracked everything on my phone, my own system, nothing written on the wall for anyone to add to without asking. I thought about the summer 4 years ago when my mother had quietly listed my vacation days on the family kitchen calendar, just penciled them in, assumed I would come to the family reunion in Wisconsin, even though I'd been planning a trip with friends that same week. I'd found out when my friend asked why I'd canceled, and I hadn't canceled. I called my mother and she was confused about why I was upset. "I thought you'd want to come," she said. "Family comes first." I'd gone to Wisconsin. I told myself it was fine. I thought about the winter Natalie moved between apartments and needed somewhere to store furniture for a few weeks. The furniture stayed for 8 months. My second bedroom became a warehouse for her dining table, her boxes, her old baby swing. People asked if I had a guest room, and I said it was being used for storage, and I tried to make it sound like my choice. It hadn't been my choice. None of it had been my choice. It had just been assumed, and I had let it be assumed, and the next step in the sequence was always someone else's name on my calendar, someone else's plan around my time, someone else's, "I thought you'd want to." Baby number 3 was not the first time. It was just the clearest time. The time I could see it. My mother called at 8 o'clock that evening, which was about 40 minutes after I'd hung up with Natalie, which meant Natalie had called her in between. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. "Natalie told me you're feeling overwhelmed," my mother said. She had a particular tone for this, warm, a little careful, the tone of someone approaching something fragile. I had been on the receiving end of it my entire life. "I'm not overwhelmed. I'm saying I haven't agreed to anything." "Of course you haven't. No one's forcing you." A short pause. "I just want to make sure you understand what Natalie's situation is going to be like. 3 children under 7, Greg traveling for work at least 2 weeks a month. She's going to need support." I said I understood that. And I think when you really sit with it, you'll see that you're actually in a position to help in a way most people aren't. You work from home 2 days a week. Your apartment is 12 minutes from Natalie's house. "Mom," and I know it feels like a lot right now, but once you get into a rhythm, I haven't said yes. Silence. Not the weighted kind, just a brief recalibration. "I know," she said gently. "I know. Take your time." But taking my time, I was beginning to understand, didn't mean what I thought it meant. Taking my time meant waiting until I arrived at yes. It didn't mean the possibility of no was on the table. No was not a destination on the map my mother had drawn. There was the current location, hesitation, and the destination, yes. And the only question was the route. I got off the call feeling worse than before, which was its own kind of information. I spent that night doing what I did when I needed to think. I made a list. Not on paper, in my head, the kind of inventory that starts small and ends up larger than expected. I thought about all the times in the past 5 years when something had been decided for me without being asked, by my family, in ways small enough that any single one of them was easy to explain away. The vacation days in Wisconsin, the furniture for 8 months, the birthday dinner the year before last, where my mother had invited 6 extra people to what I thought was a small thing, and I spent the evening managing the gathering instead of actually celebrating anything. The way my grandmother's old recipe binder had ended up at Natalie's house after the estate was divided, even though I'd been the one who cooked from it, because Natalie's kitchen was bigger and my mother thought it made more sense. No one had asked me about that either. None of these were catastrophes. That was the thing. Each one, on its own, was just a small accommodation, the kind that families make, the kind that gets called love. But I was lying in my apartment at 10:30 on a Thursday night, running the list, and it was longer than I'd thought. and somewhere in the middle of it I understood something I hadn't quite put into words before. My family didn't think they needed to ask me. They thought they already knew what I would do. They thought they had a Claire-shaped slot in their plans and that I would go there because that was where I went. The question was never, will you do this? The question in my family's accounting was only when and how. I thought about that for a long time. Then I thought about August. Then I thought about September and October and November, the long stretch of Fridays and Saturdays, the baby drop-offs and the pickups, the smell of another household's routine becoming mine, the gradual replacement of my own schedule with someone else's child, the polite exhaustion, the Christmas dinner where I'd be expected to bring a dish and also have been watching a baby all day and also smile about it because family is real and this is what family does. I was 31 years old and I worked full-time and I had my own apartment and my own calendar and my own specific, particular life that I had built carefully and maintained carefully, and none of that was on the map my mother was reading from when she thought about what I would be doing on Fridays starting in September. I called Natalie back. She picked up on the first ring. "Claire, I'm going to come over Sunday," I said, "to Mom and Dad's. And I'd like to talk to everyone at the same time, because I think we're working from different information right now." Natalie was quiet. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. Yeah, that's fair." I said goodnight. I hung up. I lay there in the dark in my apartment and looked at the ceiling, and thought about all the things I had already decided to say, and the particular unfamiliar feeling of meaning them. Sunday came cold and flat, the kind of early March sky that can't decide if it wants to snow or just threaten to. I told myself the whole drive over that I would be calm, direct, and clear, that I would say at the table with everyone present, "I haven't agreed to this, and I need us to talk about it honestly." Simple, adult, done. I pulled into the driveway and Natalie's minivan was already there, along with both of my parents' cars. Through the living room window, I could see the blue flicker of the television. I knocked once and let myself in. That was the thing about my parents' house. I always knocked, but I never waited, because it was the family home, and the family home operated on the assumption that everyone who belonged there could come and go. This, too, I notice now, was a policy I had not chosen. It was just the way things were. The living room was different. Not dramatically, my mother hadn't repainted or moved furniture, but there was a stack of catalogs on the coffee table that hadn't been there last week. Baby gear, stroller systems, infant sleep products, a couple of those thick parenting magazines with smiling women on the covers. Natalie was on the sectional with Lucas, who was working on something with construction paper. Bryn was on the floor with a toy that made noise at irregular intervals. My father was in his recliner. Greg was in the kitchen getting a drink. My mother came out of the hallway with a dish towel over her shoulder. "There she is. I made that broccoli soup you like." "Thanks, Mom." Sit down. Natalie, scoot over." I sat. Bryn showed me the toy. I admired it. Lucas showed me his construction paper project, which appeared to be a bird, or possibly a car. The television was running a home improvement show on low. The room was full of the particular low-level noise of a Sunday at my parents' house. Comfortable, warm, normal. I had sat in this room for 31 years, and it knew how to absorb me. That was the problem. My father was talking about the backyard fence. Apparently a section near the garage had shifted over the winter, and he was getting quotes from contractors. He mentioned a guy from his church who did fencing and might give him a discount. I was watching the baby catalogs on the coffee table. My mother refilled Greg's glass and sat down across from me. "So," she said, in the soft way she said it when she was moving toward a subject she'd been thinking about all week. "I was talking to Sandra. You know Sandra from my Tuesday group, and she recommended this pediatrician, Dr. Patel. Wonderful reviews. And Claire, his office is literally 4 minutes from your apartment." I looked at her. "Which is so convenient," she continued, "for when you have the baby and need to stop in for anything. He does evening appointments on Thursdays too, so if there's ever a fever or something, you'd be right there." Sandra's daughter used him for both her kids.
Greg nodded from the doorway. Good to have a backup.
Natalie was looking at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Hopeful, a little apologetic, but also certain, the way people are certain about things they have been living with long enough to believe are settled. My father put down the remote. I was looking at those convertible car seats, the ones that go from infant up to 60 pounds so you only buy them once. The thing is, with installation, you really want to have it professionally checked. There's a fire station on Clement Street that does it free. I wrote down the address. He patted his shirt pocket. Might be a good idea for Claire to get familiar with it before August. The room was reorganizing itself around a future that included me in it as a fixed element. The pediatrician, 4 minutes from my apartment. The car seat installation station on Clement Street, convenient for me specifically. The baby gear catalogs on the coffee table, like reading material I was expected to go home with. Every practical detail, offered as information, was actually a peg being driven into a wall I hadn't agreed to hang anything on. I looked at my mother. I had come here to say something. I had driven 40 minutes in March weather to say it, rehearsed it, decided it, and sat down, ready to say it. But the room had already moved around me. Natalie was there with her kids and her hopeful expression. My father was writing down the address of the fire station on a scrap of paper. My mother was talking about Dr. Patel's hours. The soup was on the stove. I got through the meal. I answered questions about my job and said the soup was good, and let Bryn show me every feature of the toy 3 more times. I helped clear the table. I told my parents the house looked nice, and hugged my mother in the kitchen. Then I put on my coat, said I had an early week, and drove home. I had not said a single thing I came to say, and no one at that table had noticed, because the version of me that agreed with everything they planned had shown up anyway, same as always, and eaten the soup, and it was easier for all of us if that was the Claire in the room. 2 days later, I went back. I told myself I'd forgotten my scarf, which was true. I had left it on the hook by the back door. But I also went on a Tuesday evening instead of calling ahead to ask my mother to set it aside, which meant some part of me wanted to walk back into that house unannounced and look at the room again with different eyes. I knew the scarf was an excuse. I parked in the driveway and went in the back way, same as always. My mother was on the phone in the living room, some long call she made a hand gesture about. 5 more minutes. My father's truck was gone, so he was out somewhere. I got my scarf from the hook. And then I turned around to leave, and I looked at the refrigerator, and I looked at the wall calendar above it, and I stopped. My mother kept the calendar in a color system: blue for my father's appointments, green for Natalie's family, red for her own, orange for anything related to the house. There had always been a color for me, too. Purple, since I was a kid, for the times I was coming over, the times she wanted to mark that I'd be around. Every Friday and Saturday from August 16th through November 30th was blocked in purple. Not dotted, not tentative. Blocked. A small rectangular fill across 2 days of every week for 3.5 months. And in my mother's handwriting, in the middle of the first blocked-off Friday, my name. Claire. Just my first name, in the middle of the square, the way she wrote everyone's names on the calendar when something was decided. Not planned. Not possible. Decided. I stood there for a moment. The refrigerator hummed. I could hear my mother's voice from the other room, still on the phone. I counted the weekends. 14. 28 days. Already written. Already on the wall in my mother's kitchen, where she could see it every morning when she got coffee. She came into the kitchen 3 minutes later, still holding her phone, saying, "Sorry about that. That was..." And then she saw my face and stopped. "When did you write this?" I said. She looked at the calendar. Something moved across her expression. Not guilt, exactly. More like the particular adjustment someone makes when they've been caught doing something they considered reasonable and are now being asked to account for it. "I was just planning ahead," she said. "You know how I like to have things on the calendar." "Mom, I haven't said yes." I know that, Claire. It's just so I can see the shape of things. My name is written on the calendar for 28 days starting in August. It's just a planning tool. It's ink. She paused. I can erase it.
That's not the point.
She set her phone on the counter. She folded her hands in front of her. She got that particular patient look she got when she was dealing with something she considered an overreaction. Natalie needs help, she said. Real help. Greg is going to be traveling more once the baby comes. The older kids have school and activities, and Natalie cannot do it alone. I'm not asking you to do something unreasonable. 2 days a week, a few months. You have the flexibility. I have the flexibility because I built my life to have flexibility. For myself. For yourself, she repeated, and the way she said it put a small but very specific weight on the phrase, the weight of someone who found the concept slightly selfish. You know, when I had you and your sister, I didn't have someone who could. I'm not saying I won't help at all. I'm saying I haven't agreed to this specific thing, and you put my name on the calendar before I answered. I was going to talk to you about it. When? She didn't have an answer for that. She had an expression, which was the one she wore when she was waiting for the emotional temperature to come down so she could try a different approach. I love Natalie, I said. I am happy about the baby, and I have not agreed to watch the baby every Friday and Saturday for 3.5 months. That is what I am telling you. My mother looked at the calendar. She looked at me. She did not erase the calendar. She picked her phone back up and said gently, the way she said things gently when they were meant to land, I think when you've had a chance to really think it through, you'll feel differently. I put on my scarf. I said goodnight. I walked out through the back door. In the driveway, I sat in my car and looked at the house. The kitchen window lit from inside, the calendar on the wall that I couldn't see from here but that I could see perfectly clearly anyway. My name in purple ink on every Friday and Saturday from August through November. Already there, already decided, already hanging on the wall where my mother looked at it every morning and thought, planned. The specific feeling I had, sitting in that driveway, was not anger, not yet. It was something quieter and more uncomfortable. The feeling of having been counted on so completely and for so long that the counting had become invisible, like something that only shows up when you look at it from the right angle. I drove home. I did not feel differently. My mother called the next morning. She said she'd spoken to my father and they wanted to have a family conversation, all of us together, the following Saturday. She said it without pressure, the way you say things when you've already made the appointment and are informing someone of the time. I said, okay. I don't know why I said okay. Part of me said okay because I always said okay. Part of me said it because I thought that a conversation with everyone present was actually the right thing, that I'd be able to say no clearly and have witnesses, and that would close it. Part of me, the quieter part, said it because I was still afraid of what would happen to the temperature of the room when I said no, and meant it, and didn't walk it back. Saturday, 11 in the morning. The kitchen table, not the living room. My mother made coffee and put out a plate of those shortbread cookies she kept in the blue tin. The domestic staging of it was not accidental. This was the kitchen they resolved things in, where the family came to conclusions together. The calendar was still there above the refrigerator, my name still in purple. Natalie was already seated when I arrived, hands around her mug, no kids with her. Greg had taken them somewhere. This was a serious meeting then. My father was in his usual chair at the head of the table. My mother poured coffee without asking. My father started. He was a practical man, my father, not given to emotional language. He preferred to discuss things in terms of logistics, of resources and gaps. He laid out the situation the way he might lay out a home repair project. Here is the problem, here are the components, here is the solution that makes the most sense given the available materials. The available material was me. Natalie's going to have 3 children under 7, he said. Greg's job has him on the road more than half the time. Your mother has her health appointments on Tuesday mornings and can't always commit to full days. You're 12 minutes away, you work from home part of the week, and you don't have children of your own yet. 2 days a week for a few months is a real practical help to a family that needs it. He said it without cruelty. He wasn't wrong about any of the facts. He was just presenting me as a resource to be deployed, the way you'd say the spare lumber in the garage could be used for the fence. I understand the situation, I said. I'm saying I haven't agreed to be the solution. He nodded slowly. I hear that. But Claire, family isn't always about what we've agreed to. Sometimes it's about what we do because it needs doing, and we're the ones who can. My mother put her hand flat on the table, not dramatic, just grounding herself. Your sister needs you, she said. That's the whole thing, that's it. We're not asking you to sacrifice your life. We're asking you to show up for your sister during one of the hardest periods she's going to go through. And I think, if you search yourself honestly, you know you can do this. I looked at Natalie. Natalie had been quiet. She was watching me with the careful expression she got when she was deciding what to say, the one that meant she'd rehearsed several options. I don't want you to feel forced, Natalie said. I mean that. If you genuinely can't do it, I'll figure something else out. A pause. I've been counting on you. Not because Mom and Dad said so, because you're my sister. And when I was trying to figure out how to manage this, you were the first person I pictured. You're the most capable person I know. I just assumed. Another pause. I realize I should have asked first. It was the most honest thing anyone in my family had said in 3 weeks. The acknowledging she should have asked part was real, but the I've been counting on you and you're the first person I pictured and you're the most capable person I know, those were real too, and they were the parts that worked on me, the parts that made the word no feel like an instrument being used to cut something living. I am my sister's first thought when things get hard. She assumed I would show up because I am the one who shows up, and that assumption was built on years of me showing up, of me being the one who could manage things, of me making it seem easy enough that no one remembered to wonder whether it cost me anything. I said, I need you to understand that my answer right now is no. I'm not saying no forever. I'm saying I haven't agreed to Fridays and Saturdays every week from August through November, and that is a real answer, not a misunderstanding. My father's jaw tightened slightly. Not anger, more like calibrating. My mother said, very quietly, Natalie is your blood. I said I knew that. Then act like it. The room went still. Not dramatically. The refrigerator kept humming, the coffee was still hot, the shortbread cookies were still on the plate, but the conversation had moved into a different register. My mother's face was pained in a way I recognized. Not manipulation, not entirely, something more like genuine distress that the world was not operating the way she believed it should. I didn't argue. I said I needed to go, that I'd been clear about where I stood, and I'd be in touch. I drove home. Natalie texted me that evening. I know that was hard. Thank you for coming. I hope we can find something that works. I sat with the phone for a while. It was a kind text. It didn't change anything. My number was out in the open now. The family had heard it. They had not received it. Dana had known me since college. We weren't the kind of friends who talked every week, more like the kind who could go a month without speaking and then call each other from a parking lot or a grocery store aisle, and the gap would close without ceremony. She was one of 2 people in my life who I trusted to tell me if I was being unreasonable, partly because she would, and partly because she would do it without enjoying it. I called her that Saturday evening. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen until I'm done. Okay? I told her all of it, from the Sunday dinner with the pot roast, through the group chat, through the Tuesday evening I went back for my scarf and saw the calendar, through the kitchen meeting that morning with the shortbread cookies and my father's logistics analysis and my mother's act like it. I laid it out in order. I tried not to editorialize. Dana listened. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a moment. Then, they never asked you? No. At any point, they never actually asked. No, they announced, they planned, they wrote it on the calendar, but no one ever said, Claire, would you be willing to do this? Huh, Dana said, in a way that wasn't minimizing, just taking it in. That's not actually about the babysitting then. I thought about that. No, I said. I don't think it is.
What do you want to do?
I looked out my apartment window. The street was quiet. That particular Saturday evening quiet when everyone has somewhere to be. My neighbor's dog was being walked by someone I didn't recognize. A light came on in the building across the way. I want to go back, I said. Not to negotiate. To say no, clearly, in the room, and not walk it back.
Then do that.
It's going to make things uncomfortable for a long time. It's already uncomfortable, Dana said. You're just the only one feeling it right now. That was the thing, wasn't it? The discomfort was entirely mine. My family was operating from a settled plan, a calendar with names in ink, a pediatrician's office 4 minutes from my apartment. They were not uncomfortable. The discomfort was a private experience I was having in my own apartment on Saturday evenings, while their lives organized themselves around my unspoken yes. I thought again about the pattern, the way my family talked about me in their plans. Claire has flexibility. Claire lives close. Claire doesn't have kids of her own, yet. Every sentence describing me was a sentence about my availability. And I had let it be. Every time I'd said, I'll think about it, and then quietly gone along with things, I had contributed to the map they were reading from. I had shown them over and over that my hesitations were speed bumps, not stops. I thought about the way Natalie had looked at the kitchen meeting that morning, genuinely surprised, in the middle of her honest speech, that anyone needed to clarify. Not conniving, genuinely surprised. Because in Natalie's experience of me, I was the person who showed up. I had earned that. I had built it. I think I've been teaching them this, I said. Dana was quiet for a moment. That's a generous way to look at it. It's true, though. Every time I bent and then gave in, I was telling them the bending was the whole process. They skip it now. Sure, Dana said, but understanding how something got built doesn't mean you have to keep building it. I didn't answer right away. I was looking at my own refrigerator. No calendar, just the door. My grocery list magnet, the takeout menus from 3 restaurants I liked, a photograph from a trip I took to the coast last September, alone, on purpose. A long weekend I'd planned for myself that had felt slightly guilty at the time for no reason I could name. I'm going to ask them to do a family dinner, I said, next week, and I'm going to say it in front of everyone, and I'm not going to soften it, and I'm not going to stay until they feel better about it. Dana said, good. It's going to be a whole thing. I know. Okay, I exhaled. Thanks. You were always going to do this, Dana said. You just needed to say it to someone who wasn't going to try to talk you out of it. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a while. The apartment was quiet in the specific way my apartment was quiet. Not the aggressive quiet of waiting for something, but the quiet of a space that was mine. My own things, my own dishes, the specific arrangement of my own life, chosen piece by piece. I thought about the calendar my mother kept. All those colors. The logic of it. Everyone's days marked and visible, everything coordinated, the family running like a system with everyone doing their part. I had grown up inside that system. I had been marked in purple since I was small enough to need a reminder written on a wall. I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar app, looked at the weeks ahead, the work deadlines, the dinner I had with a friend from my old job, the dentist appointment, the weekend in April I'd blocked off for nothing in particular except to have it be mine. Nothing about babysitting, nothing about Fridays, nothing anyone else had written there. I set a reminder for Sunday dinner, confirmed it with my mother via text. She replied with 2 hearts. She didn't know yet what I was coming to say. The following Sunday was colder than the week before. A system had moved in from the northwest and the temperature had dropped into the 20s overnight. I drove to my parents' house in the kind of gray that makes everything look flat, the kind of light that removes shadows. I had not rehearsed a speech. I had decided that a speech was the wrong tool, that a speech was something you delivered and then defended, and I did not want to defend anything. I wanted to say one thing, clearly, and let it stand. The house smelled like pot roast again. My mother had a system. Pot roast meant a significant dinner. She had made pot roast the night of my college graduation, the night Natalie announced she was pregnant with Bryn, and both times my father changed jobs. She made it when she wanted the room to feel like an occasion.
Natalie's minivan was in the driveway. Greg had the kids this time, too.
I knocked once and let myself in through the back. Everyone was already at the table when I sat down. My mother served from the big dish in the center. She talked about a show she'd been watching, then about whether the fence contractor had called my father back. The conversation had that particular surface energy of a room where several people are being careful. Natalie ate quietly. My father ate the way he always did, steadily, with purpose. It was about 15 minutes in when my mother set down her fork and said, "I've been thinking about a schedule. If we start with just Saturdays the first month, give everyone a chance to adjust, and then add Fridays after Natalie has her footing, that might feel more manageable for you." I set my fork down too. "I'm not going to do the Saturdays," I said, "or the Fridays. I'm not going to be the regular childcare for the baby."
The table went quiet, not the gentle kind.
My father put his glass down. My mother looked at me with the soft, pained expression of someone who has been very patient and is now encountering a problem that patience hasn't solved. "Claire," she said, "I'm not saying this to be difficult. I'm saying it because I've thought about it carefully, and my answer is no." "My father, you're telling your sister, who is about to have her third child, that you won't help her?" "I'm telling you, I won't be the scheduled, committed caretaker. That's not the same as not helping." "It sounds like the same thing."
"It isn't."
My mother's voice shifted. It went from pained to something older and quieter and more effective. "Do you know what it means to have family? To have people who show up? Because not everyone gets that. Not everyone has someone they can count on. Your sister needs you, and you are sitting here telling me that your weekends are more important. I'm telling you that my time is mine, not because it's more important than Natalie, because it belongs to me." "Selfish," my mother said. The word was flat, not shouted. That made it worse.
Natalie looked down at her plate.
"My father, your mother and I raised you to be part of this family. That means something. That means you show up when someone needs you, not just when it's convenient." "I will show up for Natalie. I'll visit, I'll help in ways I choose, I'll be involved. What I won't do is commit my Fridays and Saturdays for 3 months because you wrote my name on a calendar before I answered. We wrote it because we assumed." "That's exactly what I'm telling you. You assumed. You've always assumed, and I have let you assume, which is something I take responsibility for. But the answer right now to this specific thing is no." My mother's eyes had gone bright, not quite tears, but close. "Who do you think you are?" she said softly, "to sit at this table and talk to us like that?" "I'm your daughter," I said, "and I'm talking to you like someone who has the right to make her own decisions. Natalie has 3 children. You have—" My mother stopped herself. "I have what? Say it." She pressed her lips together. She didn't finish the sentence. But I had heard the beginning of it enough times, in enough forms, to know where it ended. "You have a comfortable life and no real obligations. You have flexibility that other people would be grateful for. You have time." As though having time meant owing it. As though having built space in my life meant I owed that space to anyone who asked. Natalie said, "Mom, it's okay." Her voice was quiet. She was looking at the table. My father sat back in his chair. He had the expression he got when he'd assessed a situation and decided there was no more to be done with it right now. Not capitulation, more like deferral. "I hope," he said slowly, "that when you're older and you need someone, you remember this conversation." "I'll remember it," I said. I meant that. Nobody spoke for a moment. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the wind had picked up, and a branch somewhere was scraping against the side of the house. My mother got up and refilled her coffee, even though it was still full. Natalie looked at me across the table. Her face was complicated in the way that faces get when someone is trying to hold more than one feeling at once. She was sad, and she was still my sister, and she was sitting at a table where something had just been decided that she couldn't undecide, and she didn't know what to do with any of that. I didn't either, but I hadn't moved. I pushed my chair back. It made a sound on the linoleum that everyone heard. The scrape of it was the loudest thing in the room for a moment. Louder than the wind outside, louder than the refrigerator. My mother looked up. My father's jaw tightened again. I reached behind me for my coat on the back of the chair. "Claire!" My mother's voice, sharp now, the warmth gone out of it. "We're not finished." "I think we are," I said. "If you walk out right now." I put my coat on. I picked up my bag from where I'd hung it on the corner of my chair. I looked at my mother. She was standing now, both hands on the table, leaning forward, and for a moment she looked very much like herself from when I was 16, when she used to say, with the absolute certainty of someone who had decided what was true, that she knew what was best for this family. "I love you," I said. "I'm going to go." My father said my name. Just that. Low. Tired. The single syllable of it. I walked to the back door. The cold hit me as soon as I opened it. A real hit, the kind that pulls the breath back. I stepped out into it. The porch light was on, casting a yellow circle on the back steps. I went down the 3 steps without looking back at the door. I could hear my mother's voice behind me. Not the words, just the sound of her talking to someone. To my father, to Natalie, to the kitchen. And then the door closed, and there was only the cold and the sound of my boots on the pavement. My car was at the end of the driveway. I got in and closed the door and sat there. The windshield had a light frost starting at the edges, the kind you get when the temperature drops fast in the late afternoon. The yard light above the garage came on automatically, triggered by a timer. The house windows glowed. I had driven here 100 times, probably more than 100. Birthday dinners, holidays, the random Sundays that accumulated across 31 years. This driveway, these windows, this particular shade of yellow from the porch light. I sat for a while. Then I started the car, let it run for a minute to clear the windshield, and drove. The city came in gradually, the way it always did on the drive back. First the wider roads, then the traffic lights, then the density of buildings, my neighborhood, the familiar gas station on the corner, the coffee place I went to on weekday mornings. I parked in my spot under the building. I sat there for another minute, hands on the wheel, the engine ticking as it cooled. Then I went upstairs. My apartment was dark, except for the lamp I'd left on in the living room, the small one on the side table that made the room look warmer than it was. I put my bag down. I hung my coat. I stood in my kitchen in my socks and looked at my refrigerator, the grocery list magnet, the takeout menus, the photograph from the coast, and I was aware of a quiet that was different from the quiet I usually felt here. Not comfortable, not yet. More like the quiet after something has changed and the room hasn't caught up with it. I put the kettle on, a habit when I didn't know what else to do with my hands. While it heated, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my phone. There was already a text from Natalie. "I'm sorry things went the way they did. I hope we can talk soon." It was kind. It was the kindest text Natalie had probably been able to send given what had happened at that table, and I held it at arm's length and tried to figure out what it cost her to write it. My mother had not texted. My father had not texted. The kettle clicked. I made tea. I stood at the window with the mug and looked out at the street, which was quiet and gray under the streetlights. The neighbor's building across the way had a window lit on the 3rd floor, and I could see the edge of what looked like someone's bookshelf. Just that, the edge of books, warm light, some other person's evening. There was a particular cost to what I had just done, and I was feeling it now in the specific way you feel things after adrenaline drains out. Not regret exactly, something more like the awareness of weight. The weight of the relationship before this evening, all its years and meals and accumulated comfort, and the knowledge that I had put something between myself and it that was not going to dissolve by morning. My family would not move on easily. My mother would not call tomorrow and say she understood. My father would not revise his position overnight. The calendar above the refrigerator still had my name in purple, and it would have to be erased by someone's hand, and that act, small and physical and mundane, would be the first evidence that something had actually changed. I had walked away. I had done it with my coat on and my voice level and my feet moving. I had said I loved them because I did, and I had left anyway. And now I was standing at my kitchen window in the cold quiet of my own apartment, holding my own tea, and there was no one here to tell me I'd done the right thing. And that was exactly as it should be. I drank the tea. I washed the mug. I went to bed. The silence lasted 3 weeks, and then it became something else. My mother did not call. My father sent a single text 4 days later, a link to a news article about traffic on the highway, the kind he forwarded sometimes without context, which I understood as his way of leaving a door open without saying so. I sent back a thumbs-up emoji. That was the extent of it for the first week. Natalie called on a Thursday. I picked up. "I'm not calling to argue," she said immediately. "Okay. I just wanted to check in." A pause. "Are you all right?" I told her I was. I asked how she was feeling. "Big," she said. "Tired. Greg got home last night, which helped." Another pause. "I'm going to figure out the childcare. I don't want you to feel like... I don't want this to be something that stays between us." I told her I didn't want that either, that I was glad she called. We talked for 20 minutes about things that had nothing to do with the baby or the calendar or the Sunday dinners. She told me about a show she'd been watching. I told her about a work project that had finally resolved. By the end, it felt almost normal, which was something, not everything. We did not resolve the larger thing. We both knew we hadn't. But the line stayed open. I stopped going to Sunday dinners. Not permanently, or not with any stated permanence. It was more that the standing routine quietly ended, the way things end when you stop maintaining them. My mother mentioned once, in a text, that she'd made pot roast and there was plenty left if I wanted to stop by. I said I was busy that day. She sent a heart emoji. I sent one back. We were finding the shape of something we hadn't named yet. Not estrangement, not closeness, something more like a renegotiated distance. I bought myself flowers one Saturday in early April. Just a small bunch from the grocery store, yellow and white, something cheerful for no reason. I put them in the glass pitcher on my kitchen table because I didn't own a proper vase. They lasted almost 2 weeks. It was a Sunday in late April that felt like the end of something and the beginning of something else. The weather had finally turned. Genuinely warm for the first time, the kind of morning where you could leave your windows cracked and the air coming in would smell like damp earth and cut grass. I made coffee. I stood at my kitchen window with the mug and looked out at the street, which was already alive. A couple walking a dog, someone on a bicycle, kids on the sidewalk below. I had a plan for the day that involved only things I had chosen. A walk through the neighborhood, lunch from the place on Archer Street that did a soup I liked on weekends, an afternoon for whatever I felt like, which was a category I was still learning to fill without guilt. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my phone, opened my calendar. Sunday. Blank. No one's name in any square. No commitments I hadn't made. No babysitting. No Fridays carried over. Just the clean grid of the week ahead, and the quiet of the morning, and the coffee, and the window with the cracked open air coming through. I sat there for a while with the mug, not doing anything in particular. This was mine. The coffee and the morning and the open calendar and the cracked window and the sound of the street waking up. It had always been mine, technically, but it felt like mine differently now. The way something feels different when you've had to choose it deliberately instead of just finding yourself in it. The cost of a choice makes it real in a way that comfortable drift never does. My family and I would work something out, eventually. Not the same something we'd had before, but something. There would be more phone calls. There would probably be more difficult conversations. The baby would come in August and I would visit. On days I chose, for lengths of time I chose, because I loved my sister and I wanted to know her child. Not because someone had penciled my name on a wall. The Sunday light shifted as the morning moved. The flowers I'd bought were still on the table. A different bunch now, this week's. Another small yellow and white thing I'd picked up because I felt like having them in the house. I drank my coffee. I let the morning be morning.
The calendar on my phone had nothing in it for Sunday except what I'd put there myself, which was nothing, which was the whole point. I closed the app. I finished my coffee, I rinsed the mug and set it on the drying rack and stood there for a moment in my kitchen, in the sound of my own apartment, in the specific quiet that comes from knowing that the time in front of you belongs to no one but you. Then I went and got my coat and my bag and walked out into the morning to go do whatever I felt like doing, which was everything, and which was enough.